Well, the context is back in May, Donald Trump made the wrong kind of history, becoming the first person to have held the office of American president to be convicted of felonies. Since that date, we've been waiting for this sentencing, which was supposed to occur in July, was then delayed until this month, and has now been further delayed until after the election. Now, the judge's reasoning, which he provided in a letter to the opposing counsel in this case, is in part about the upcoming presidential election, which he acknowledges is a factor. So he says the imposition of sentence will be adjourned to avoid any appearance, however unwarranted, that the proceeding has been affected by or seeks to affect the approaching presidential election in which the defendant is a candidate. So the judge is very clearly stating that he has taken into account the fact that Donald Trump is not only a former president of the United States, he's also the Republican nominee for this presidential election. It is interesting to juxtapose this from what we heard yesterday in a different case that Donald Trump is involved in, which is a criminal case being heard here in Washington, D.C. In that case, the judge said that she was not taking into account the upcoming presidential election and how she was determining the timeline. But obviously, this justice is aware of how closely watched this sentencing will be and the potential implications. But it does mean that Donald Trump will now go to this presidential election as a convicted felon, but one who has at this point not been punished for his crimes. Should also point out that Donald Trump is appealing that particular conviction or that series of convictions. In that case, that appeal will also be heard in November ahead of that sentencing. But this is a significant victory for Donald Trump, who wanted this sentencing to be pushed back further. He wants, obviously, for the convictions to be overturned, but this at least means that he does not face the potential of either a custodial sentence or big fines ahead of the election. Now, although it is possible he would be jailed, that is not the expectation, given that this is a first-time offence, but it does set up this historic situation where potentially, if he does win at the upcoming presidential election, that the president-elect of the United States could be facing jail time.
And Carrington, Donald Trump has also appeared in a courtroom in New York in a separate case. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, just again, another strange day in American politics. Not only did we hear yesterday from a different case that he's involved in that case regarding his alleged actions during the January 6 riots on the US Capitol. Today, it was an appeal over his a civil trial where he was found liable for both sexual assault and then defaming the author E. Jean Carroll. Now, he, at the moment, owes Miss Carroll more than $100 million for defaming her and for being found liable for sexual assault. He's appealing that decision. He chose to actually turn up in court, which was unusual. He didn't need to be there, but instead seemed to want to make a point of it. He then held this 45-minute long, what he called a press conference, although he never actually allowed any journalists present to ask him questions, where once again he railed against E. Jean Carroll, seemed to use language of the sort that already meant that he is liable for defamation, which you would think increases his risk of being forced once again into a hefty payout. But also on this occasion decided to turn on his lawyers, some of whom were present. Here's a little of what he said.
I feel sad that I have to come up here and explain it. I have all this legal talent, but legal talent cannot overcome rigged judges. They can't overcome a 4% Republican area. And I'm disappointed in my legal talent, I'll be honest with you. They're good. They're good people. They're talented people.
Now, in many ways, this is a sideshow to the main event, which is that Donald Trump is running for president, and next week he will be taking part in his first and potentially only debate with his Democratic opponent, that is Kamala Harris. So we'll see how that plays out.